Izuku Midoriya was born in a family that was very odd. One that were praying for a child that could take on the legacies that everybody else wanted. You see, this was a different part of Japan. A part of Japan that many did not know. A part of Japan that many didn't believe even existed. It was Hitman's Row, an underground city of some sorts, one that various people knew nothing about. A part of Japan that basically was flooded with dark clouds and covered up like it was never there when hero society began to rise, when quirks began to appear. The art of making a person disappear is the art of a hitman. That is the goal of these people, and they've been doing it for years on end. For those who know of him or know of them, for those that know of these so-called hitmen, they would appear and basically license their services. They'd get paid an abundance amount of money for, well, to make people disappear. And they were praying, hoping, and just straight up waiting for that one child that would change everything, that would change mountains, that would give them something to make everyone fear, to make them look over their shoulder and remember Hitman's Row. Yes, this may not be as prevalent as it used to be since quirks came about, because they haven't gotten their hands on someone that can carry on the legacy. But finally, when Hisashi Midoriya and Inko Midoriya, two hitmen and a hitwoman who really weren't very good at their jobs, had a child, well, this child would come out to be Izuku Midoriya. Izuku Midoriya would be born with a quirk that would be so astonishing that many didn't know what to even think. At the young age of 4, Izuku would just appear in random places out of nowhere, as if someone would be looking at him, but then he would appear behind them in an instant. They would think that this kid might have super speed, maybe teleportation, something. But no, they would soon learn when Izuku got older, the way he would explain this so-called power, this so-called quirk, that it was neither. It was not super speed. It was not teleportation. It was known as time skip, time manipulation. Izuku could do it all. At the age of 8, he began sparring with the other kids, but the other kids couldn't even keep up with the momentum that Izuku would carry on. Izuku would appear and disappear in a matter of seconds, and, well, let's just say the kids would feel multiple punches in their stomachs without even Izuku moving. Izuku would be standing right in front of them, and out of nowhere, they would feel pain all over their body. Izuku being able to manipulate this time skip, but of course, speed was always a, well, disadvantage. With time skip, you could only control time to a certain extent. Izuku was able to get it down to the point where he could do it about 1 second to maybe even 2 seconds. And of course, this is pretty astonishing, but Izuku doesn't have superhuman speed. So he was able to, utilize it in his best way, but he continues to stretch out this time as much as possible. But of course, Hitman's Row is about production, and Izuku at the age of finally 10, after training for a while, would get his first hit. Yes, a young child, and most of the time they will never send them out, but at the end of the day, he is some sort of prodigy, one they have never seen, so they need to know, is he truly ready for some of these hits that he needs to go on? Well, they'll find out relatively quickly. The hit that they want basically to be done is an older gentleman, one that runs a very corrupt company. If he dies, then it would all get transferred over to a young man that they all know, someone that they know personally, and that if he takes it over, Hitman's Row will eventually gain more and more power. So in a way, it would be gathering or taking one corruption and making it into another. But nonetheless, it would be in the favor of the hitmen, so it's something they want Izuku to try. Izuku would walk toward the building and immediately act like a little kid, asking around, "Hey, do you know where my mom is? She got lost, and I got lost, and I don't know what's happening." Immediately, they would allow him into the building and sit him right at the front desk. But just as the elevators would open and close, Izuku would be gone, and he'd be standing in an elevator. Izuku constantly begins to move back and forth using his time skip as the elevator goes up so that the facial recognition will never even see him. Izuku, obviously being very well educated in every aspect of what's going on, he would eventually arrive on the floor that the boss or the person he needs to kill is at. There's 3 guards waiting though as they see a young boy walking up, immediately asking where his mom is, acting like some young child that's just lost. The boss would walk up and would wonder if the kid is okay, asking if he is. But just as he's asking this, Izuku seems to be flickering. He doesn't know what's going on, but it's as if his body is going non-transparent to transparent. He doesn't know what's happening, and he reaches out toward Izuku, asking the boy if he's okay. And just as he says this, all his bodyguards drop down to the floor, knocked out entirely. Izuku would look at the man, and immediately there would be cuts all over the man's body, and he would collapse to the ground and, well, bleed out. As quickly as Izuku was there, the flickering of his body would then be gone. The camera is not even able to get a trace of his face. The 10-year-old has gotten out scotch-free without any alarms triggered, without any, well, security even realizing it, and frankly the ones that did were on the ground dead. Izuku, already back at the hitman's base, or more or less the city of the hitmen, they begin to congratulate Izuku for a job well done. They heard through the grapevine that the job went extremely smooth. This would then put Izuku in a place of power. They would tell him that now it's truly time for his real training. Yes, they taught him things here and there, but as a hitman, you need to know everything. You need to do everything, and you need to be perfect. And that's what Izuku plans to be. Not only for himself though, for his family. That's what really matters. Izuku's mother, Izuku's father. That's who he needs to be perfect for. They are basically low-level hitmen, and now they just outputted the, well, possibly the strongest hitmen that they will ever see in their lifetimes, maybe multiple lifetimes. Izuku is so strong that he put his own family in a place of power. 2 of the weaker of the hitmen / hitwomen or women. That's exactly what power can do for you. Exactly what a quirk that strong can do for you. Izuku would continue on with his training, utilizing his time skip quirk, but also on top of just straight up sparring, straight up getting used to different martial arts, different weaponry, different everything. Eventually though, he would come across a prodigy like him, a child prodigy from another city of hitmen, or another underground version of, well, Hitman's Row. As he comes across them though, it's a woman, no, a girl, someone very similar to his age, both being at the age of about 14. This woman, or this girl's name, is Charlotte. Charlotte is basically like him, but in a different regard. She can fly. She has these angel wings that allow her to swoop down and kill people in a matter of seconds, but she's heard of Izuku, taken back by the fact that everybody's so fond of him. But as respectful as Izuku's been taught, he walks up and extends his hand, asking or hoping that they can hopefully be friends and eventually partners and basically bring back the hitman to the surface. This woman, or this girl, Charlotte, would refuse this, saying that she challenges him to a duel, that there's only one prodigy that could really that will stand in front. Izuku says that he has no intent to fight, And of course, the leaders at this moment of the Hitmen begin to say that there is no choice now. She has challenged you, so a fight must proceed. Izuku asks what this fight is to, and they immediately say that it's to unconsciousness or death. That's just the rules that they make within the Hitman's row. Izuku shakes his head, and as she begins to basically fly in after him, a flicker is in an instant. Izuku fades right through her as if he was never there in the first place. Izuku tells her that there is no beating him. Whatever she studied, whatever she decided, and whatever she figured out how to defeat him is not something that she actually knows now. Of course, she's shocked to hear this, as if how did Izuku even know that she's been studying him? How does he know anything? But Izuku says that's a lucky guess. But at the same time, nobody comes in and challenges another prodigy without a plan. Izuku tells her that his quirk is interesting. Very interesting. He might be able to pause time, stop it, skip it. He might be able to be in a void of timeless space, a void of nothingness. But there's a difference. What she saw was 4 to 5 seconds of stop time. Well, that was a long time ago. Izuku can stop time for far longer now, and his stamina keeps up with it, with a massive amount of techniques that she has no clue even exist. Charlotte would mock him and then walk toward him and say that just can't be true. Eventually, she'll land a hit. Izuku, as she's flying forward, would dash right in front of her, immediately standing in front of her as he taps her on the chest. Just as he does this, she's frozen in place. Izuku tells her that this is her own little time bubble. He just continues to speak with her, saying that this time bubble will be let go whenever he so chooses, or he can continue to output more and more time, and let's just say her life may get accelerated a little bit. Izuku begins to focus harder on his hand, but she says that she yields, that she gives up, and that she loses. She swears she won't fight anymore. Izuku lets her go, and Izuku smiles. Yeah, the whole aging fast thing was a lie. Sorry about that, but I also didn't want to fight you any longer. We have things to do. Izuku would then begin walking away and ask, one of the leaders currently at this moment about what their next mission should be. He immediately learns about this mission, and Charlotte is pissed that he basically underhandedly won the match. But there was no fight to be won. Izuku already knew he would win. There was no beating him in this scenario. Izuku tells her that doesn't really matter now and wants to know if she's going on this mission with him or not. And of course, she's confused, wondering what kind of mission he needs help on. He says that he doesn't necessarily need the help, but it's a new change of scenery. They're actually headed somewhere else. And this is pretty interesting. Their next mission involves one thing, and they are actually headed to school. They're actually, more specifically, headed to the UA entrance exam. They have some time. In between, but that's exactly where they will be going. It is explained to them that the whole entire goal of going to the UA entrance exam isn't actually to necessarily get into UA and basically go through all of these steps. They actually have heard that the successor of All Might is going to attend that school, or is going to be at that school. They're not so sure who that is, they're not so sure who that's going to be, but that could lead them to a couple of things. For one, that would lead them to know exactly who the successor of All Might is, and also basically his greatest weakness. On top of that, that should lead them to the villain group who they know as the League of Villains. Izuku would immediately ask, how does that even correlate? but they begin to bring up that there is a long history with All Might and All For One, and the League of Villains is directly connected to All For One. So we can assume that they want to kill All Might, and All Might being a future teacher at UA, well, I mean, what better place would it be to have All Might get taken out at the UA high school itself? Izuku hears out the entirety of the, basically either, well, I guess not really the plan, but kind of the, like, output and the reason why they need to go, and he feels that actually does kind of make sense. So he doesn't really think too much about it, and he asks Charlotte if she's truly ready, and if she wants to train with him over this next, well, couple months before the entrance exam, well, they can do that as well. Charlotte says that she'll make sure to beat him one of these days, and that's just going to be a fact, and Izuku just shrugs, saying that whatever, it doesn't really matter, and their whole goal, I guess now, is to squeak into UA. But with their potential, their strength, and their training, that shouldn't be too difficult. Even all the Hitmen really believe that. Hitman's row then goes down on basically shutdown. Nobody's going in, nobody's going out. This is the mission that matters the most at this moment. Once they leave, then everything will continue on as normal. Months would pass, and tons of training would go throughout, and Izuku and Charlotte would head off to the UA entrance exam. When they arrive, they would bump into some people, but frankly, these people have no consequence to them, and frankly, Izuku and Charlotte are just on the lookout for a potential successor of All Might. During this time, Izuku would just keep his eye open, take his tests, and obviously listen to Present Mike explain the first part of the exam. After taking that said written exam, they pass it relatively easily, but now it's ready for the practical. And the practical seems to be just a bunch of robots. 1-pointers, 2-pointers, 3-pointers, so on and so forth. And, well, this should be easy enough. Izuku then heads in, and as he does, he watches Charlotte fly in with a mace, just smashing through robot after robot. He actually forgot that they were allowed to use their weapons because it was deemed necessary for not only their quirks, but also their fighting styles, and that's kind of what they were able to secure. But Izuku doesn't really care. He dashes around, time skipping everywhere, smashing robot after robots, but then realizes something very, very, very crucial, and that's, well, there's two hero courses. There's 1A and 1B. Well, this actually matters because what if the person that is All Might's successor gets into 1B? Yeah, that may seem far-fetched, but everybody has their off days. Everybody is still training. Everybody's getting strong. Even Izuku knows that he wasn't the strongest, person ever when he first started training. Oh, of course, he was really young, but still, that was the case. Everybody's like that. What if All Might's successor, well, somehow just got the quirk, and maybe All Might's successor hasn't been training long enough? He doesn't really know. He hasn't seen anybody that has a similar fight style to All Might's, not really at all actually, and he just continues to break a couple until he feels that he gets a score that wouldn't get him into Class 1A, but would get him into Class 1B. Of course, at the very end of it, Charlotte actually racked up a metric butt ton of points. It's absolutely ridiculous, but the 0-pointer wouldn't really be much of a problem. Actually, well, Ochako Uraraka, the person that got stuck under rubble initially, would be just swooped up by Charlotte and taken away, confirming that Charlotte would probably be getting first in the exam. It might sound crazy, but Charlotte's quirk isn't just flying. She has some sort of, or what they know as, a battle angel quirk. It hasn't been studied very much. Of course, the Hitmen have their own doctors, but it's kind of outaged, so they only know of her wings. But it's pretty obvious that Charlotte has some sort of, well, strength enhancement, so she kind of just smashes through more things as it goes. Of course, she got destroyed by Izuku, and there's a reason why. His quirk is built for 1v1s, and it's not even close. Of course, he can beat groups, and that's definitely something he's shown, but a 1 versus 1 is practically impossible against him. That's why she'll never really beat him. Nonetheless though, Izuku gets enough points that he feels he will pass, but will most likely get put in Class 1B, and Charlotte kind of overdoes it and becomes the first in the course, even in front of someone like Bakugo. Nonetheless though, Izuku would basically just wait for him to get this so-called letter. And when it would arrive, it would announce that Charlotte got first place, and everybody would be pretty shocked, thinking that this is great, and that this is amazing, and that Charlotte's going to be in Class 1A, blah, 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 and all of this stuff. And they basically begin, some other people from the other Hitman's row begin to think that, well, she's better than Izuku if she got a higher score. But Izuku kind of laughs this off, saying that they can think whatever they want, but Charlotte will never beat him in a fight, and will never be stronger than him. Of course, they kind of take offense to this, but immediately Izuku shuts them all up, saying that there are 2 courses in the hero course, 1B and 1A. If she goes to 1A, he can go to 1B, and they can find this so-called, well, All Might's successor. Izuku shutting all of this down, everybody's shocked. He was able to think of this, and nobody else even thought of it. Charlotte didn't even think of this, and gets kind of mad that he didn't even bring it up to her. I mean, it would have been easier that way, right? But Izuku says that it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, they were able to figure this out and settle these things how it should be settled. When they open their letters, obviously it's revealed that Izuku did get into Class 1B with basically about middle of the pack type of scores. Izuku would be allowed in Class 1B, and obviously Charlotte would go to Class 1A, and they would be on the lookout for this so-called successor of All Might. Izuku, though, in Class 1B, would be just, well, doing orientation stuff on the first day, and a little bit of, well, bonding or just learning exercises that Vlad King has prepared. Izuku quickly realizes that Class 1A would have been a lot more fun, because I guess they did a whole quirk assessment, they got threatened to get expelled. Like, that just sounds exciting to Izuku. I mean, other than that, it's kind of boring what they're doing right now. But nonetheless, it's okay. I mean, they'll figure something out eventually, right? The next day, that actually would be figured out. They decide that they're going to have a bit of a training session, and Izuku would be pretty excited for this. But then something interesting would get brought up. Something that Izuku wasn't expecting at all. So what they thought was that All Might was finding his successor at UA. Well, that wasn't exactly the case. All Might has already found his successor, and found them a long time ago. And his successor would be introduced relatively quickly, especially when Izuku begins to basically hear about what they're going to do. That they are actually going to be meeting up with the Big Four. Izuku immediately asks, what's the Big Four? And he swore he heard something about that, but it was the Big Three. And immediately Vlad King says that, well, another hero jumped onto the scene, or at least a future hero jumped onto the scene in the third-year classroom, and frankly has shown insane promise, and she's come from a whole different country. Izuku is shocked. He realizes something. That has to be them. That has to be her. Izuku then asks, what's her name? And her name is Melissa Shields. Izuku asks, like the famous Shield, like David Shields. And immediately he says yes, that it's good to see that he's well informed. And actually, she'll be helping them out in their training sessions today, making sure that their support equipment is working flawlessly, and that, well, they're all doing their 1 versus 1s properly. Izuku doesn't know what to say. This is definitely a revelation. He thought it would have been a first year, but if we're talking about a capable third year, problems come into factor. Very, very big problems. If there is a mission that he needs to kill her, that makes things a lot more difficult. He hopes that that's not what it comes down to, and that's not what the Hitman's Valley wants. And, I mean, frankly, he doesn't know if he'll even be able to do it. He doesn't know how strong this person is. I mean, it's All Might's successor for a reason, right? They would eventually all head out, get their so-called hero suits on, and Izuku would just get on a uniform that basically was made for him, or a newer version of his Hitman suits. And he would head out and meet up with Vlad King and Melissa Shields. And just as they meet up, they begin to explain exactly what's going to happen. 1 versus 1, heroes versus villains. It's simple enough. The hero needs to stop the villain from entering the building and touching the bomb. A bomb that's basically, if they touch, would be considered as a lethal explosive and a lethal, well, destructive weapon to blow up the building. But if the hero stops them, detains them before they can get to the bomb, or stalls them long enough for 5 minutes, meaning that other heroes would arrive on the scene, then the hero wins. It's actually pretty simple. And the villain can take any way that they choose. It could be a frontal assault, behind, or whatever, but it all starts with behind this line. This line is just one big square around the building, saying that basically the villain can start from any area, so the hero needs to be prepared. Of course, Izuku thinks that he wants to get this over and done with as quick as possible, and they immediately ask who wants to go first. Izuku raises his hand and says that he will go first, and they ask which side does he want to be on. He says that he'll be on the villain side, and well, they say that's just fine. The next person would raise their hand, and it's actually Tetsu. Tetsu would say that he guesses he'll be on the hero side, and he will be the Iron Wall. Immediately, Izuku is just thinking of different ways to immediately just win so he can go on with this. He needs to break this down in his head. A third year is All Might's successor. This means a lot. It means more than he could possibly imagine. They're not like him. Third years are different. He's read up on them. They say that the big 3, or I guess the big 4 in this instance, is on the level of top pro heroes. We're talking a top 10 pro hero at UA. He's never fought a top 10 pro hero. Yes, he's efficient with his work, but that's a whole different story. That's different. But just as he's having this conversation in his head, they tell him that the time is up and it's time to go. Izuku would look at Tetsu and flicker one time and immediately be right next to the bomb, touching it. They're all shocked. Vlad King, and so would his Melissa. Izuku already won. How the hell? Vlad King is completely speechless. The fact that Izuku has basically beat Tetsu in a matter of a second, a split second at that, instantaneously. And immediately he's back where he once was, and he pats Tetsu on the shoulder, saying that the matchup 1 versus 1 is impossible with someone like him. As he's walking away though, let's just say there's something else that wants to be asked. Melissa would walk over and ask if it's really true that a 1 versus 1 is impossible against him. Izuku would look at her and realize what she's doing. Oh shit. In his head, Izuku knows what he's going to have to do. He's going to have to face her in this same setting. Immediately, Vlad King says that since the fight was pretty quick, how about we flip sides? But this time, Melissa will be the villain and Izuku will be the hero. Izuku doesn't know what to say for a second, but then realizes he needs to keep this facade on and not act like he's nervous. He slams his fist into his hand and says that, well, I mean, he won't be taking it easy on her. Izuku smirks and walks by. Melissa immediately says that, well, there's a reason why she's in the big 4, and there's a reason why they added another person to the big 3 initially. Izuku kind of laughs at this as well, saying that the big 3 is what it's supposed to be, not the big 4. That she is just some reject, and that it's going to stay that way. He promises that he is stronger than she even realizes. That he might be here, and he might be a first year, but he has far more up his sleeve than she can possibly imagine. Melissa smiles and says that it's good to hear. Confidence is fun. Immediately, the countdown would begin, and Melissa would take an immediate jump toward Izuku. This right here emulated All Might. Yeah, she's definitely the successor to the #1 hero himself. In Izuku Midoriya and Melissa now begins. Melissa goes charging at Izuku, and in an instant, Izuku is behind her, landing a nice blow to her ribcage and then a punch to her stomach. Izuku then immediately follows up with a kick and sends her backwards. Melissa smirks and continues to barrel forward, but this time when Izuku tries to activate time skip, he gets caught with a right hand, land flush on his jaw. Melissa then begins to kind of, in a way, laugh at him, but at the same time tell him that overconfidence will definitely put him in trouble. Izuku isn't sure what she's talking about, but it seems like every time he tries to activate time skip, she gets way faster. Every time Izuku would activate it, he would get hit with a right cross, or a punch to the face, a kick, anything. It seems that Melissa has realized that there are tells to Izuku's body when he's going to activate time skip, and as long as she can meet him there with a punch before time skip activates, she can actually stop him from doing it. Melissa would end up revealing this, and Izuku would say that she shouldn't have told him that. Now he just won't do that tell. But Melissa says that when you've trained, most likely as long as he has, and it's pretty obvious that he's been training, that there is really no way of giving or stopping those subtle tells. They're automatically ingrained in his brain. There's no way he can just get rid of it entirely. Izuku scoffs at this and immediately goes to activate time skip. Melissa then appears in front of him, but Izuku wasn't activating it, baiting her in as he punches her right in the stomach and she freezes in midair, capsulizing her in time itself. Izuku holding her still, he begins to say that she is now underestimating him, and now she is being overconfident. Izuku focuses all his power into holding her still and says that they will be sitting here for a while until the match is completely called off. Izuku just continues to hold that grip, but Melissa begins to crank up One for All, trying to break through whatever this so-called is. Just as she reaches 100%, Melissa seems to be struggling, about to break free. Izuku puts more power into it, forcing her still, but just as he does this, these black tendrils and whips reach out and grab him, throwing him toward a wall and slamming into it. Melissa immediately is able to break free, but something is happening. Whatever it is, it's bad. Black whip, or the quirk that just arisen and has came about, Melissa had nothing to do with it, had no idea it existed, and it's beginning to go haywire, slamming everywhere, destroying building after building that is nearby them. Izuku immediately dashing toward Melissa and activating time skip, trying to get her out of there or get it to stop without actually hurting her, but he gets lashed away directly after. He then looks toward Vlad King and he's herding the kids away to try and get them to safety. Izuku just realizes that there is no other way. He time skips once again, landing multiple blows to different parts of Melissa's body that would temporarily put her out of commission. Immediately, time skip would end and she'd collapse to the ground. He'd catch her and then begin to carry her to Recovery Girl. Izuku didn't want to do that because, well, he didn't want to give away anything that he knew more than he was leading on, but luckily no one else was there watching. He carries her away, obviously, to Recovery Girl, and Recovery Girl says that she will be just fine, but whatever happened was a freak accident, something that they would never have realized. Izuku shakes his head and says that he doesn't know either. Maybe it's some sort of quirk awakening to whatever quirk she actually has. But what he assumed or he begins to tell Recovery Girl that he just assumed that she only had some sort of strength enhancement quirk, so it would be odd that, well, it would develop into something like this. Recovery Girl doesn't have much to say because she doesn't want to give up any information, but nonetheless, Izuku has came to his own conclusions and has gotten a lot of information that he'll need to relay to Hitman's Row. But during that incident, it drew a lot of attention, obviously. So Melissa will basically be kind of nowhere around the scene, at least for the moment. After the day was over, they would head back to Hitman's Row, and he would speak with Charlotte and basically the leaders of the row for a little bit about what he's seen, about who she is, and about why they need so much information on this successor. Of course, they just want control. They just want to know what's going on and what is going on all the time. But Izuku tells them straight off that he will most likely be the only one that can stop her, but there is no telling what she'll be able to do in the near future. She might get to the point that she is literally unstoppable, and he'll have no way of doing anything if they choose that they want to kill her. It might be impossible for him. She might get to the point that, well, she transcends the speed of time. The time that he has is something interesting, and he's basically shown that as well. He encapsulated her within time itself, and she was able to overwhelm it and break free. He's not exactly sure how that even works and how that will even happen, but at the same time, what he has is a quirk. It's not some magic that he can control limitlessly. The quirk is obviously based around his body, based around his limitations. So maybe he'll get to the point where he can encapsulate anybody he wants for as long as he wants, but that is, well, something they won't know for a while. Izuku makes it clear that these things need to be taken into account, and if they decide that they want to kill her, it might be without his help. Izuku says this, and not in the way that you would think, or at least that's what he believes at this moment. He believes that he's saying this because he might not be strong enough, but maybe in a way, Izuku knows how good of a hero that she could possibly be, and he's personally killed some people that could have repented, that could have changed society for the better, but wasn't doing what they should be doing, at least at this moment. Hitman's Row has never been known to be ones that only kill villains. They have killed heroes. He has killed heroes. That's just kind of part of the job. If the price is right and the hit is right, that's going to happen. But Izuku thinks about it for a while and just thinks that maybe Melissa can change hero society and this society for the better. He'll keep that in mind, but for now, he wants everyone to believe and think that he is currently outclassed, at least, or will be outclassed in the future. Charlotte does question him about this, and even says that she heard about their little fight. Izuku reminds her that that is now, not later. He can tell that Melissa just started using One For All, but at the same time that she has an insane grasp on it already. And from, well, the rumors he's heard, she's an expert in support items, who says that she won't be able to make an entire suit that allows her to basically exploit One For All at a higher rate than she is right now. There are a lot of things to keep into account, and even Izuku wants to make sure that everything they're doing is extremely measured. After talking for a bit, Charlotte does bring up that their class is heading to the USJ. Class 1A will be heading over there basically for rescue training. Izuku says that this is fine, but to make sure to keep their little communication device on at all times. And if he sees it go off, that he will know something is wrong. Izuku makes this very clear, and, well, he was able to predict something that, well, he didn't even realize he was going to predict. He's in class 1B and relaxing and basically just learning about some new things, but during this time, the beeper that he has next to him and the red light would turn off instantly, telling him that whatever is happening, that she either turned off her thing or her communication device, or something is blocking it. Izuku would be getting very concerned, and he would ask to go to the restroom. He would head to the restroom, but no, he would immediately begin time skipping all the way to the USJ. He would then time skip by as he sees Tenya Ida running at full speeds by him. This is not a good sign. It definitely worries him and makes him extremely concerned. As he finally arrives, he enters to see some very, very drastic things going on, villains all around, and they're fighting all of the students. Izuku watches as Aizawa begins to fight off tons and tons of villains, and Izuku immediately dashes toward the giant group of villains and time skips through, knocking out every last one of them so that Aizawa can help protect the kids. Aizawa looks to his right to see Izuku in his hero suit and questions what the hell does he think he's doing here. Izuku says that they can get mad at him later, but he felt there was a reason why he should come here right now, and that Charlotte was in trouble, so that's why he arrived. Immediately time skipping out as if he just disappears, he begins to basically go check in on every last student around. Not because he cares about every single student, but more like he needs to check everywhere because Charlotte could be literally anywhere. Eventually he would find her, and he would also find a bunch of very, very maybe dead bodies? He's not so sure. But he immediately takes her and just dashes away and gets her basically to safety at the very top of the staircase. She asks what the hell does he think that he's doing here, and he says that her communication device turned off. So immediately she's pretty shocked about that, but at the same time it was kind of perfect. It actually worked out pretty well for him. And Izuku begins to turn as he watches a different type of monster begin to attack. He immediately asks, what the hell is that thing? This giant Nomu just arrives out of nowhere, but luckily soon after, All Might would arrive too. But just as he does though, he begins to fight the Nomu. As he's fighting that said Nomu though, it seems to be that he's on even playing field. Or maybe weaker? Izuku's not sure, but I mean, by theory, if All Might loses his quirk, then he would get significantly weaker. But when did he lose his quirk? When did he give it to Melissa? That's a whole nother question. He's not sure. But at the same time, All Might, there's a chance that he can lose this fight. That's not good. He needs to make sure that they can guarantee make this work, make this win. Immediately he begins to walk forward, but Aizawa tells him not to take another step. Izuku looks at him and says that he does not care, that this is a fight that All Might needs to win, and right now, as he says this, he says right now there is no way All Might's going to win. Breaking free of Aizawa's grip, he dashes forward as if he was never there in the first place, disappearing and appearing right next to the Nomu. Izuku punches him in the ribs, the back, the face, the stomach, any punches, all the punches, as much as possible. All Might is kind of confused at what's going on, but out of nowhere, the Nomu is completely frozen entirely. Izuku's holding out one hand and focusing as much as possible. This is like holding an 100% one-for-all Melissa just staying there as much as possible. Melissa felt the need to upgrade all the way to 100% so that she can break free. It wasn't going to break her bones because, well, there was nothing to basically impact on, but at the same time, this is a bit of a struggle. Izuku's holding his arm and tells All Might to hurry the hell up. That the Nomu won't move, but every punch will basically get transferred to the very, very end. All Might's confused, but Izuku yells at him, telling him to start punching. Immediately, All Might begins to punch the Nomu in the face, in the stomach, everywhere, laying punches and bunches, hundreds of punches as fast as possible. And then Izuku and his hand begins to slightly fracture. A small crunch can be heard, and Izuku is forced to let go. He lets go, and as the Nomu gets let go from this time-like warp or this time-like stasis, all the punches begin to land. Boom, 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 boom. One after another, it begins to lay into the Nomu, and he gets absolutely obliterated, getting sent flying everywhere, and he's laying on the ground, and All Might was able to surpass the regeneration that the Nomu has. Izuku would then time skip away from basically where they are, shaking his hand off, trying to get it to heal, but obviously it's a bit fractured and a bit sprained. He looks down to see that All Might won the fight and that Shigaraki and Kurogiri leaves. Immediately, Aizawa would grab him by the neck, or at least the back of the neck, and by the arm, telling him that he's in trouble, big trouble. Izuku shrugs and says that he understood that, and he begins to walk with Aizawa. Of course, when they get to the principal's office, everything begins to get explained. Nezu hears about what he did, and also Aizawa tells him that he shouldn't have done something so rash. But how did he even know about it? He begins to make up a little bit of lies, saying that Charlotte is a family member and they always keep communication devices on each other, and when this red basically light stopped blinking, he knew that there was a communication error. There was no reason to turn off his communications. That's been a rule all their life. You never turn it off. That's how bonded they are. At least that's what he begins to say to Aizawa, saying that they've basically been around each other all this time, so that's the number one rule. Never turn off your communication device, because you never know what's going to happen. So when he saw it go off, he immediately asked to go to the restroom and immediately went to where Charlotte told him where she was going to be. Aizawa is shocked to hear this, as if they had an entire game plan of basically if a villain attacked them. He's impressed, but at the same time tells Izuku that he can't do things like that. He doesn't have a hero license, and that was extremely rash. If he does that again, he'll be in trouble. Izuku asks if he's not in trouble now, and Aizawa sighs and looks at Nezu. Nezu shakes his head and says since he's done such a good job, and the only reason why it went so smoothly was because of him, they'll let him off this time. But to not do something that crazy ever again. He's a student and they are in charge of him. If something happens to them or happens to him, then they're in big trouble, and they want to make that very, very apparent. Izuku puts his hands up and says that he promises he will not be doing that again, and he promises he will definitely think before he does something as crazy as that. Of course, Izuku would go back to his normal class, and he would get a little bit in trouble for what he did, and he would apologize to Vlad King for doing it, but he just knew that his sister, or at least that's what he's telling them, was in trouble, so he wanted to make sure that she was good. And he respects that, and as long as he promises that he won't do it again, then it won't matter to him in the long run. Izuku nods of basically agreeance, and Vlad King begins to explain that they have a lot to talk about, especially coming up very, very soon. The next day, it would become very, very apparent that this information that they have gathered is crucial to Hitman's Row, and it confirms exactly what they thought. The League of Villains. The League of Villains is after, well, All Might. They were trying to kill him, and luckily Izuku was able to shut that entirely down. Currently, they want All Might alive, at least just for the moment. On top of that, I mean, frankly, he's the symbol of peace still. It's a bad look and may even bring up a little bit more attention to them if they're not careful. All Might takes away a ton of attention, especially the way he acts and the way he is, so it kind of helps them, All Might being there for the moment. Well, with that said though, when they arrive back at school, an announcement about something very, very, well, important, at least to the grand scheme of things, begins to get revealed. That is the UA Sports Festival. The UA Sports Festival is definitely something Izuku and Charlotte were not exactly ready for and weren't necessarily informed as well for. Of course, I mean, they're going to have a good bit of, well, success, but that's not their goal. And Izuku would actually realize that he'll need to cut his little trip short very, very soon. During the obstacle course race, Izuku realizes that he actually got a message from Hitman's Row, so he decides that he's going to check it out and see what it's about. He realizes that it's something, well, a mission, in fact, that he needs to actually go on. There is someone that he needs to speak with. So Izuku decides that during this obstacle course race, he would act like he gets stuck and that his time skip won't allow him beyond the boundaries of the minefield. So he does this in fact, and allows him to just lose, and Izuku doesn't really care very much. He leaves the stadium and gets pretty mad, quote unquote. Of course, he's approached by a teacher, approached by Vlad King, and Izuku says that it's frustrating, that he must have overused his quirk and it kind of forced him into this scenario, and he wasn't able to get past the minefield. Vlad King pats him on the head and says that it's okay. His potential seems to be limitless and that he can be an extremely powerful hero in the near future. Izuku thanks him and says that he's gonna go to the bathroom, get some water and stuff like that. But instead, Izuku would head to Hitman's Row, speaking with the leader there, and then speaking about the mission that he wants him to go on. And that is actually to speak with somebody. He decides that he heads off to a nearby place in a nearby warehouse. As he enters this warehouse, though, he's greeted by some odd-looking figures, and one more specifically looks extremely odd. This person seems to be wearing some sort of bird-like mask. Izuku then begins to speak with him, asking about what information does he want to know. Immediately, the man introduces himself. He begins to say that, well, he would have thought that, well, the person that they would send would be a little bit older. He didn't know they would send such a low-tier hitman. Immediately, Overhaul begins to send out his goons to test Izuku. Izuku, not knowing that this is some sort of test, thinking that it's some sort of, well, ambush, he immediately kills all of them. Overhaul is shocked to see this and begins to tell him to calm down. I didn't know that you would be this powerful. You're just a kid. Interesting. Very interesting. Now you are something that's I've heard about. I can tell by your movements, by your strength. You have a special type of quirk. I've heard about it. Time skip, correct? Izuku asks what he wants. He's here to give him information, and that information doesn't include basically information on his quirk. So if he wants something, he can tell him, but other than that, he'll be leaving. Immediately, Overhaul says that he has somebody with a very similar quirk to his, time related of course, but it's a little different. It's a quirk that will change society, change everything. You see, I didn't call you here because I needed information from you. I want to give information to you. Now, I know the Hitman's Row, and I know how long they've wanted quirks to peter out, decrease, because then it would bring them into power. Now, at the same time, I can't relinquish all the power itself. We, as the Shie Hassaikai, need to live, thrive, and work. Now, what I'm offering to you, and, well, your leaders, which I assume you'll soon be one of the leaders, is something that can change it all. Something that will definitely flip society on its head. Now, with that said, here, take this. It's a note, and it explains exactly what happens, what it does, and what is to come. I want you to give this to the higher-ups. Tell them what I said. We can be helpful for both of each other. I can help you, you could help me. I promise this will be beneficial for both of us. Izuku grabs it, puts it in his pocket, and says that he'll be heading off now. He then just disappears, and Overhaul slightly smirks, thinking that this is perfect. Izuku would head back to Hitman's Row, revealing to basically the leader what Overhaul has given him and what Overhaul has said. They're a little bit confused. They've never worked with a Shie Hassaikai, but as they read more information, they read about this thing, these bullets, quirk erasing bullets, something that would reset society entirely. Now this is something that they've been looking for. This is something that they've been hoping for. Izuku intervenes, saying that they have no idea how these are being made. That is of importance, isn't it? Immediately, the leader agrees to this and says that is going to be Izuku's job. He needs to find out how these bullets are being made. He needs to find out exactly what it takes to make these so-called bullets. Maybe they can make it for themselves, or maybe they'll be able to learn information that would give them one up on the Shie Hassaikai and even more control in the future. Izuku agrees and says that he will actually head out right now to get that information. He begins scouring everywhere, place after place, trying to learn something and eventually coming across that so-called base. But what Izuku would basically find out, what Izuku would realize extremely quick, the quirk that this man was talking about was the quirk of a young child. A quirk of a young girl by the name of Eri. Izuku, being a kid himself, a young teen, how will he feel about this? How will he feel when he realizes that a young child is being tortured for the benefits of the Shie Hassaikai, and then in turn, the benefits of the Hitman's Row? Well, you'll have to find out on the next parts of What If Deku Had a Time Skip Quirk. Izuku Midoriya begins to learn more and more about the Shie Hassaikai, and when he begins to learn about these things, well, he hears about Eri, a young child that's been abused, used, and utilized for her quirk being that of rewind. After a long time of searching for the base of the Shie Hassaikai and learning about this information, he now questions something even greater. The Hitman's Row want this advantage. Are they willing to use a young child for that advantage? Or will they see it the way Izuku does, as horrible, demented, something that you should never put a child through? Nonetheless, he'll have to think about that when he gets back, and he'll have to save the child first. Izuku would walk through doorway after doorway and passage after passage. In doing this, he would slip by every single person and eventually make it to this medical bay looking area. He would enter to see a young girl that had white hair. She seems to have bandages all over her and she seems extremely hurt, and she's confused at who Izuku is. Izuku walks over and tells her to hang tight, to not worry that she's going to be getting out of there very soon. Izuku would then dash and time skip everywhere looking around to see the best passageway out, and eventually he would find it, grabbing Eri and going away as quick as possible. Nobody would even know he was in there. His time skip has advanced to a certain point that it doesn't even matter, and Izuku would have Eri in, or have Eri out of that place in a matter of seconds. Izuku would then enter Hitman's Row once again and tell them that he figured it out. This young girl is the way they were making these so-called bullets. Her quirk is extremely powerful and is overwhelming to the point that they had to be encapsulated in these so-called bullets. Izuku then takes off once again, and the people of Hitman's Row begin to inspect Eri a little bit. Izuku would head back to the Shie Hassaikai base, and he would arrive, looking around for the one named Overhaul. Eventually he would be found, and in a matter of seconds Izuku would be in front of him, beating him down. Izuku would hit him hundreds, maybe even thousands of times before even stepping back into reality. The rage he is currently feeling is pushing him to a brand new height, a rage that he's never felt before, and it's not even for himself. He beat down Overhaul so bad that he's left in a bloody pulp, dead. On top of that, he begins to time skip around, defeating and, let's be honest, killing everybody, every last person in the Shie Hassaikai base. Because at the end of the day, if you're intertwined with someone like Overhaul, someone that could do so bad, then you must be horrible. Izuku shows no mercy, and he ends all of their lives, and eventually he would arrive back at the Hitman's Row. But when he would arrive back, he would hear arguing over something that definitely caught his eye. What should they do with Eri? Should they harness the power that she was gifted, or should they let her live a life of a normal child, give her off to the police? Some people believe that. Some people in the Hitman's Row believe that she's just a baby. But just as these arguments are happening, everyone begins to realize something. Where did Eri go? Where'd she go? She's gone. In a matter of seconds, and well, frankly, no time at all, literally, Izuku had Eri out of there. He didn't trust the fact that they even thought about basically hurting this child, using her for experiments, and he immediately brings her back to, well, UA, dropping her off and keeping her there. But just as he's leaving, he's stopped by somebody, stopped by Aizawa himself. He begins to question where Izuku has been. Of course, Izuku has missed a good fair bit of time. Izuku begins to tell him that he has no interest in UA. He has no reason to be here anymore. And frankly, he might as well tell him who he truly is. Izuku begins to say that he himself is the prodigy of Hitman's Row, or at least one of them. Izuku begins to tell Aizawa that he has no ill will toward him and has no objective to hurt him. Hitman's Row seems to be something he wasn't expecting it to be. He was born into it, raised by it. That doesn't mean he believes it to be good, but that was his only home. All he knows now is that Eri should be safe. A young child that was once like himself should have a choice in what she wants. And that's exactly what she's giving her, a choice. Hitman's Row won't give her that, but UA will. Izuku then begins to walk away, but Aizawa grabs him with his scarf. Look, Aizawa, as much as I respect you, we know how this ends. I've been trained as an assassin to kill people, and once your eyes dry out, there is no stopping me anyways. So how about you let this go quick, and you just let me be. Izuku would eventually get let go of the scarf, and Aizawa would watch as Izuku walks out, but would remind him that he could be whatever he wants to be now. Doesn't mean he needs to keep up with this hitman shenanigans, that he can do whatever he wants. Izuku continues to walk and doesn't listen to a word, disappearing just as quick as he appeared in the first place. He begins to head back toward Hitman's Row, and when he arrives, a bunch of the elders and leaders begin to complain and yell at him, telling him that he did not have the power and authority to make that choice, to take Eri away. That could have been their final trump card, one to stop everything, to stop Quirks, to change this life for them forever. But Izuku shakes his head and says that he won't allow them to do that to a child. He realizes something. He did not ask to be born into this world. He did not tell anybody that he wanted to be a hitman, especially not the prodigy of them. At the end of the day, he wants his choice, and if they're not going to give that to him, then to hell with them. Izuku immediately basically plows his hand through one of their chests, killing him instantly. And then he turns to the rest of them. You all made a big mistake. A very, very big one. You thought you could control the power of your so-called prodigy. But you forgot one thing. That the world has a way of opening my eyes and opening everyone else's eyes, especially when you have me out on the field all my life. Izuku continues to basically destroy, kill, and murder every last one of the elders, and everybody that decided and said that Eri should have been let free and given a normal life survived. Izuku would then disappear and make sure that his parents are safe so that no backlash goes to them. He would head to the other Hitman's Row and he would see various others, and he would want to ask them one question. Immediately they're confused. What's even going on? They look at his suit and it's completely bloody. They question what's wrong with Izuku, and Charlotte even comes out asking if he's okay. He then tells all of them that they were given a choice. The last Hitman's Row failed. They were given a choice of changing the society to what they believed would be right for them, or giving a little girl, no, practically a baby, their freedom. A baby the life that they wanted and deserved. One not full of violence and one of love. Which one would they have chosen? Immediately, they are on their seats, edge of their seats, not knowing what to say. Charlotte would come forward and say that whatever baby or whatever child, no child is worth that sacrifice, and they would have to find another way. Even some of the elders would hear this and be shocked, and by the facial expressions alone, Izuku would know. But he would let it go on, let them talk. He would hear mixed reviews. Some people saying that the child deserves a life that the child really needed, wanted, and would eventually be happy of. But others believed that their cause was too stricken. Their cause was too high and mighty, and just as this came out of Izuku or their mouths, all of their bodies would drop dead. Izuku would look at Charlotte and the rest of the people, saying that this hitman's row, and all of them alike, is over. They need to be something else. If they believe that changing society to the whim of them is right, especially at the sacrifice of some innocents, then this is not what he was born into, and that's not what he's really is signed up for. But Izuku says that no matter what, from here on out, he will be a hitman, a timeless one at that, and he's going to make sure every last one of these villains fall and bend the knee. Izuku would disappear and everybody would stay there in complete shock. Izuku would begin to start a new life for himself personally, getting a little place that is completely off the grid, and he would take his time, wait, and he would begin to learn, study, try to figure out where certain villain groups are and certain villains. One that he wanted to hunt down and one that he wanted to find was Stain, the hero killer. He's killed, hurt, and destroyed many, even children, even teens, people that were in his high school at one time. He's heard about that, and supposedly he got away. Many believe that he's retired now, or, put away, because he was done with his list of heroes. But someone that kills heroes and kills heroes at that will always be around. Izuku has now realized that killing just for the sake of killing isn't something he really wants. What he wants is the people that truly deserve it to fall. Stain may have a philosophy that would allow him to kill only fake heroes, but a lot of real heroes die in the aftermath, and that is what makes Izuku extremely angry. He would begin searching for this so-called Stain, the hero killer, but of course it would be extremely difficult to find him. I mean, he wouldn't be the hero killer if it wasn't. But eventually he'd stumble across a victim of Stain. He would think that, or many thought that he was basically retired, but of course that wouldn't be the case. The media and the heroes were just trying to cover it up. But Izuku would walk up on Stain and begin to question every philosophy he has. But soon and quickly, he would realize that Stain has no quota. He has no reason for what he does, at least not good enough in the eyes of Izuku. Izuku would tell him that this is the last fight he will take and the last fight he will have. He puts one arm forward and one arm to the side as he moves his arms quickly and holds them above his head. Izuku immediately time skips, dashing towards Stain, hitting him multiple times over and over and over again. Izuku would then clean up the area, body bag Stain, and drag him off to an unknown location. He would then eventually sneak into UA, grab what he wanted and grab what he needed, or basically in a way teleporting out, but of course time skipping out with his costume. He'd put it on and he would take a sigh of relief. He now has what he needs. He grabs the body bag of Stain and enters into a building that is 50 stories high. He goes up to the very top, the news broadcast station. He walks over to them as they're actually delivering some regular news. But he comes over and tells them to move, that he has a message. He would then basically zipper down the body bag of Stain, showing the face of the hero killer completely dead. And he would begin to speak to the camera. This right here. This is the hero killer that got away. The one that paralyzed Ingenium, one of the best heroes in Japan. Proceeded to kill his brother and still walk free. But everyone told you that he was dead. Funny enough, he's not dead. He's not in prison. Well, actually, excuse me. He's dead now. But the heroes lied to you. Lied to me. Everyone has so far. And for those that have only done good by me, thank you. That's respected. But I want you all to know, and I want you to know very quickly, every villain out there that does wrong will have to deal with me. I am no smiling All Might. I am no symbol of peace. I am no fiery endeavor that will rage in front of crowds. I am no rabid hero that will kick and punch their way through a monster with a smile on her face. I'm not the heroes that you see around you. I'm a cold-blooded killer. I was raised for it. The ground up. That's all my life has been. And I will not hesitate to end the lives of every villain that I see. All Might may have driven down, crime rates to an all-time low. But my goal isn't to drive them down. It's to get rid of them entirely. Izuku would continue to speak, telling everybody in Japan to be on notice. Everybody watching, heroes alike, are interested but terrified at the same time. Izuku has shown this dead body of the hero killer, and it doesn't even look like he, had a scratch on him. Izuku continues to speak, telling everybody to stay on notice, especially the ones that are more or less deriving everything. He would look into the camera and begin to talk about one more person. And all for one, I want you to remember this. All Might have not been able to defeat you. But me, I'm not here to defeat you. I'm here to kill you. Izuku would reach his hand back and punch toward the camera, sending a shockwave toward it, shattering it, and immediately the broadcast would go offline. Everybody that was currently there would look toward where Izuku was, but he was not there anymore. Just the body bag of the hero killer Stain. That was it. Izuku was gone. And that was it, and that's all you heard of him for a little while. You didn't hear much. Silence was deafening. Silence spoke volumes. It was terrifying knowing that someone was out there, a hitman at that was ready to kill, butcher, and do whatever it took, to make society perfect, to fix it. Izuku would eventually go back to Hitman's Row and see that everyone has gathered up once again. Everybody that believed in the cause that he said. They begin to tell him that they saw what he was saying and everything that he did. Even Charlotte saw what Izuku said and heard it loud and clear, and agreed that every single person, every bad person needs to fall. And if that means starting with giant CEOs or villains alike, they will make sure it happens. That is what Hitman's Row will now be. This is not a payment system. This is not the highest bidder gets to get the person they want killed. Izuku wants a new oath, a new resolution, and that is exactly what they're going to have. But they have targets on the list, things to check off. Izuku looks and he sees the League of Villains, All for One, and possibly many more to come on that list. Many even in different countries, and they will spread worldwide if need be. And the start of the true Hitman's purge will finally begin. And it all starts with the man in the middle. The man that defies all time itself. Izuku Midoriya will lead the charge in this final purge of villains and the final purge of villainy. Izuku and the Hitmans alike will now be hunting down All for One and the League of Villains. Izuku Midoriya has now set the Hitman's Row on fire. It's no longer what it used to be. It's no longer the Hitman's Row that he grew up in, was raised in, was bred by. It's far different now. Many have died in the line of Izuku, and many have left out of fear that Izuku would do what he did to them, or the others, straight back to them. But of course, Izuku had no intention of doing that. He's now hunting heads. He believes that there are some people in this world that need to be dealt with, and dealt with pronto. And those people involve the League of Villains, and also All for One. He wants to make sure that these people are eliminated, taken out forever. And that's exactly what his plan is going to be. He wants to wait on the perfect time, and luckily, Charlotte is still near, or at least around UA, and she has some information for him about the Forest Training Camp, a camp that Izuku will go to on the hunch that the League of Villains are going to invade. And that hunch would be right. Izuku would stalk from the mountains, waiting and waiting. On a mountain right by the forest camp, he would sit on and wait. He would wait for night to be upon them. He would then get some sleep and wait for the next night to come as well. Izuku's patience would start running thin, thinking that this whole idea that the LOV would show up is something that isn't true, that maybe it was a miscalculation and maybe they thought too far ahead. But eventually it would be proven to be right, as he watches a young kid, just a boy, walk up the same mountain he's chilling on. He basically hides away, making sure he's not seen, until he hears a deep and a terrifying voice come from the forest, more or less threatening the kid that's sitting right there. The kid begins to panic, trying to run away, and then eventually would trip and stumble, almost falling off the cliff. But he did fall off the cliff. He slips and he comes tumbling down, but he then just appears back on the cliff once again. And obviously this man that's standing in front of him by the name of Muscular is tripping. He thinks that this is ridiculous, that this must be his quirk, maybe he can teleport, but then the boy is gone. Now he's behind Muscular. No, now he's on top of the hill, away from Muscular. He's confused. The giant cliff above them is, well, the boy is just sitting on it. And the kid seems surprised as well. He looks at his hands thinking that maybe he did that, but of course we know he didn't. Izuku would then appear in front of Muscular in his hero quote-unquote outfit, but more like his hitman outfit. He would then tell Muscular that he made a big mistake coming here. Immediately Muscular's eyes grow wide and he realizes who this person is. He tells him that he had a job to do, that Muscular was offered this, and how could he decline? He needs to be able to do something like this. Izuku shakes his head and says that no matter the amount of money, he doesn't care anymore. He no longer cares about this so-called money that they speak of, a hit on anybody. He's no longer just a regular hitman. He's something else. Izuku would then appear right in front of Muscular and then disappear in an instant. Punches would be thrown all on Muscular's body, and indents from Izuku's fists can be seen everywhere. He would then pass out, be completely unconscious, and, well, he would eventually die. his heart would stop, and his life would peter out in a matter of seconds. Immediately though, Izuku would then grab the young kid by the name of Koda and bring him back to the camp. He would appear in the camp right next to Aizawa, and then nobody would be there at all. Aizawa would immediately ask Koda what's going on, but no answer could be even told. Koda doesn't even know what happened. He says that there was a guy wearing this so-called like dark purple outfit, and he defeated a villain instantly. He's so confused at what occurred, but Aizawa knows exactly what happened. It was him. It was the guy that he's been thinking. The prodigy of the Hitman's Row. It was Izuku Midoriya, the one he's seen even in UA, one that slipped through the cracks. He did that. He saved them, or saved him, and, well, must still be here. And of course, Izuku is, picking league member after league member off one by one. But quickly he would realize that some were fakes, not real. Actually just clones made by a man by the name of Twice. But Izuku nonetheless would continue barreling through these so-called villains over and over and over again, and capturing a couple more than original. But still, Katsuki Bakugo would get taken away just like in the original. Izuku would then begin scouring the land, making sure everyone is good, everyone is safe, and on top of that no villains or any villains that were left over got handled and at least either killed or thrown into the police. Izuku would then leave without a trace and begin to gather more and more information about where these League of Villains members will go next. Where are they? And he would eventually catch wind of exactly where they are. Izuku would approach that building, that same building that is holding Katsuki Bakugo, and he'd give it a slight knock, and then knock again. Immediately the room would go silent, and he would say, "Pizza delivery. Pizza delivery." And just as, well, the League of Villains is confused, Izuku would be in the room, standing with them, and would say the same thing again from behind them. "Pizza delivery." Izuku would look at them dead in their face, and immediately they try to attack him, but he's gone. One by one, they get struck down. Dabi gets cracked first, knocked out cold. Then Kurogiri. Then Shigaraki. Then Toga. Everybody you can think about that is there currently gets knocked out, killed, or more or less extremely injured. Izuku would sit on a stool and be surrounded by the villains of the LOV, and their bodies would not be moving, not even 1 inch. Izuku would break the handcuffs off of Bakugo and tell him that it's time to head out, that he can take him back home if he wants, but I mean, the heroes should be here relatively soon. Bakugo looks away for a second and questions what the hell Izuku is doing and what's even going on, turning back toward Izuku, but he's gone. Izuku has disappeared and is currently in a near distance away, knowing that the heroes are about to approach. The heroes would then invade the hideout to see that the LOV is completely demolished, dead, or in a comatose type of state. Of course, they take who is alive and, well, you know, do what they have to do with the people that are dead. But Izuku watches on as he expects something else to occur. For those who are currently alive, portals begin to open up beneath them, dropping through those portals, getting away instantaneously. But Izuku knew this would happen. He time skips immediately through that portal, and it transports them to the final battle arena, or, well, a big city for the fight for All Might versus All for One. Izuku would immediately grab the bodies of these so-called or comatose state LOV members, taking them away and ending their lives or putting them in captivity in a matter of seconds, not allowing them to even escape one bit at all. Izuku would then watch as All for One would then finally appear. All Might would be there to fight him, to fight All For One in a final stand. One final battle for it all. Izuku would watch from the distance as these two titans would clash over and over again, while tons of these other heroes were consumed or basically have to fight Nomus alike. But nonetheless, that fight between All For One and All Might was spectacular. Izuku just waiting, and right when All Might goes for a punch, he would teleport in, or, well, not teleport in, but time skip in and immediately pause All For One in time, making him completely stuck, and All Might lands a blow so hard straight to his face that it shatters his mask, sending him flying. He time skips down to All For One once again, and he tells All Might that what he's doing isn't the proper way of going about it. All Might tells the young boy to stay there, don't move, and calm down. There's no reason to get drastic. Izuku says that there is a reason to get drastic, and the reason is to shut this all down. Just as he's about to kill All For One, a kick comes soaring from behind him and he gets thrown toward a building. He disappears in a matter of seconds, and he then stands normally once again in front of two people now, Melissa and All Might. Izuku tells them both that the beef isn't with them. He needs to make sure though that this guy right here dies. And All Might immediately says that's not what a hero does, and Izuku cuts him off, saying that what does a hero even do? Put them in jail so they can just escape? Put them away for what? For life, and what? That's their punishment enough? No. What kind of sick, demented idea is that? How stupid could you sound? Death is the only way out. That is it. Izuku believes this with his chest. He believes that death for these villains is the only way out. But All Might and Melissa say that it could be better, that he doesn't have to do that. But Izuku says that he'll take on the burden when he meets everybody in the afterlife. But for now, his philosophies stay the same. He then immediately reaches out his hand and makes a fist, creating an area of just time stoppage. All Might and Melissa standing insanely still, not being able to move at all. And Izuku tells them that he's transcended his power through and throughout. He's transcended it by just watching them fight. He's gotten far stronger than the last time he sparred Melissa, and yes, she may be the successor of One For All, but that does not matter. He's transcended everything. There is no stopping him now. Izuku walks over toward All For One and the body laying on the ground, and he obliterates him to no end. There is nothing left. Izuku destroys All For One, killing him instantaneously. Izuku would then let go of the time barrier and immediately time skip somewhere else, screaming toward them that this is over. That yes, they can try their best to try and get him. They can do whatever they think is possible, but at the end of the day, there is no way to catch him, because every single hit he has on every single villain is timeless. That's how much time he has. He has so much time that everyone feels as if there is no time to catch him, that there is no way to catch him. Izuku will never be caught. That's what he tells them. He will never be caught. The timeless Hitman will never be caught. The Hitman's row is different, far different than what many have heard of and believed it to be. He made sure of that. He made sure that it's different compared to everything else. He made sure that it wouldn't be what it was before. Aizawa tries to activate his quirk, but Izuku looks at him and shakes his head, saying that he's developed far beyond that. No regular quirk can truly do that. And maybe, just maybe, Overhaul was right to an extent. Izuku's power may creep so far along that it might tear his body apart, put him in a timeless void, but it doesn't matter at this time. When he's an adult, he'll have to deal with that, and he'll have to deal with the repercussions. Izuku would tell them all that it doesn't matter though. His quirk progression and his time progression, his pure progress, is what is going to save Hero Society and save everybody from losing the ones they love. Izuku would then disappear, and it was just like that. Some think that Izuku's power crept up so much that now he's in a state of eternal time, that there is no way out. The afterlife, he saw and said that he would have to deal with the repercussions later when he dies. Well, it's as if that would never occur. It's said that Izuku disappeared, never to return. Some believe that he had such good control that he began swooping up villain after villain without anybody even noticing. That is how strong he became. But others obviously have their theories, thinking that Izuku is time-locked, dead, gone, not to be existed anymore, but many are confused, especially when they hear about a new villain, a prominent one, someone that's terrifying, but in a matter of days would be gone. But they would wonder who would take the recognition. These heroes, they say they did it, that they did it, of course they did, but no, the public knows, a lot of people know, agencies, even the heroes, they know that this is different. They didn't defeat a villain that was so strong that it was terrifying to the public. Someone else did. The timeless Hitman did, even if you cannot see him move. Izuku Midoriya still puts a hit on every villain that would appear in Japan and soon to be across the entire world.